It was a big week for fertility news. Robert Edwards, a British biologist, was awarded the Nobel Prize for his pioneering work in developing in vitro fertilization. That's a procedure in which an egg and sperm are united in a lab dish to create an embryo in order to help infertile couples start a family. Then there was the exciting announcement from Stanford University, where researchers reported a refinement on Edwards' original technique that could hopefully improve pregnancy rates from IVF. What they ended up doing was taking the equivalent of the first home movies of these embryos, filming their first 24 to 48 hours and capturing in exquisite detail every cell division. Their goal is to use this information to pick out the best embryos much earlier and hopefully avoid leaving the embryos in the dish for too much longer.
One must congratulate the authors for looking at a difficult problem and trying to improve our abilities to identify the normal versus abnormal embryo very early on.
That was Dr. Zev Rosenwax, director of the Perelman Center for Reproductive Medicine at Weill Cornell Medical College. He says if the test is validated, IVF clinics will be quick to pick it up.
It would be very useful if one could predict which embryos early on are the ones that would go on to blastocysts and therefore have a higher chance of implantation. But we have to be careful that before we make conclusions that in fact this is proven in terms of the clinical arena, that indeed these changes are not only associated with blastocyst formation but also with embryo implantation, with normal pregnancies, and finally with deliveries.
My husband and I tried on our own for about 3 years, and that combined with the fact that I am now 34 sort of pushed us toward the next step.
Improving the odds of IVF is something that Jamie Galemba, a first-grade teacher, can certainly appreciate. She recently underwent her first IVF cycle at the Scher Institute for Reproductive Medicine.
All along there are sort of criteria you need to meet to move on to the next phase, so it feels like you're always trying to pass these tests that are really sort of out of your control. It's biological or it's medical. So to know going in that they've chosen embryos that are the most viable would really help from the patient's perspective, help you know that, there's a greater chance of success.
Dr. Drew Tortoriello, the medical director of the Scher Institute, pointed out another advantage of the technique.
We very much want to get our patients pregnant. We very much want to give them that which they seek so desperately. So in our zeal, very often we tend to put back more than one embryo. And you never truly know who's going to win the lottery that day and wind up having all the embryos taken. Multiple pregnancies are fraught with risk. So anything that we can do to hone in on the singular best embryo, is the holy grail essentially.
Robert Edwards' goal was to help infertile couples to start a family. And by refining his original procedure, the new technique could help them to do just that.